security breaches of 2020 alone have been unprecedented, reflecting on the need for organizations to fortify their businesses with end-to-end guardrails. Our panel, titled When Security is Priority, Everybody Wins, delves into the subject with guests Phil Montgomery, General Manager of Security, Compliance and Identity at GTM at Microsoft, and Arina Ghosh, Executive Director, Cloud Solutions, Azure, Microsoft 365 and Dynamics 365. Ashish Narkar is the Head of IT Securities, Internal IT Infrastructure Services at TCS, and Chandan Pani, CISO at Mindtree.
Hello, and welcome to an insightful panel discussion on one of the most critical and pervasive elements in every business that we're finding today, security for all. I'm Arina Ghosh, and I'm the Executive Director, Cloud Solutions in Microsoft India. The last 2 years have been watershed years in cybersecurity. The pandemic continued to bring in new challenges as attackers really took advantage of the overstretched landscape to unleash new human-operated ransomware, malware, and nation-state attacks. What's more, the nature of the attacks not only increased in number and intensity, but also increasingly complex. Let me just give you some facts to relate to what I'm saying. Nearly 1.6 million cases of cyber attacks was reported in India in 2020, which was up nearly 3 times from 2019 and more than 20 times compared to 2016. Cyber attack on organizations worldwide jumped by about 29% YOY in the first half of 2021. A cyber attack against the United Nations occurred in April 2021, targeting users across the network to further long-term intelligence gathering. With the move towards the hybrid way of working, which is becoming a new normal as of today, security professionals found themselves in a quandary. Many more endpoints to protect and many more people within the organizations to educate. So with that, how can India Inc. bridge the security talent gap, create the culture of security, and build up the muscle that we need to create a long-term security strategy? To discuss this more, I have with me today a panel comprising Chandan Pani, Mindtree CISO Corporate Security, Ashish Narkar, Head Security Operations at TCS, and Phil Montgomery, General Manager, Global Security Go-to-Market Lead, Microsoft. Thank you so much for joining us today. So Ashish, let me begin with you. What are some of the top changes and challenges you are witnessing in the security landscape now?
Thank you, Irina. I'll take this question. During pandemic, almost every organization's IT departments were tasked with enabling secure remote working for entire workforce within few weeks of time, which essentially diminished the security perimeter. Many organizations probably had only 20 to 30% of capacity and capabilities in place for remote working and were required to scale those rapidly. Suddenly, every user's endpoint device became perimeter and their digital identities became extremely critical before providing access to enterprise resources. This led to exponential rise in attack surface, leading to opportunistic and targeted attacks. Another challenge was to maintain the required level of security hygiene with respect to patching, vulnerability management, and compliance. Technology architectures built for yesteryears suddenly became irrelevant and ineffective. Surviving in new normal required radical thinking and rapid adoption of key transformative next generation security services. Those who invested in required technologies proactively were better off transitioning to new state. However, those who were not prepared enough would have struggled for sure.
Chandan, like Ashish pointed out, there was really a big uptake in the way security started getting managed for business continuity in these really challenging times. So at your end, how are you seeing organizations cope up with the hybrid model? And what are some of the challenges that people and organizations are facing all across the value chain?
Thanks, Irina. Probably I'll divide that question into two different uh, subsets. One, how organizations are coping up, and the other one, what are the different challenges. Now, when it comes to the cope up part, I would say they are forced to cope up because no other option available today, right? Now, in current situation, there are multiple thoughts around hybrid model. So there is on-prem, off-prem, hybrid. I'm sure we need some more time to settle down to understand what we need, one size for all, or customized based on our requirement. But largely, it is going to be around your partial remote working with some concerns around culture, inclusion, well-being, collective ownership, probably something to do with awareness, learning and development, etc. But while this is the cope up part, the challenges are probably many that we are facing today. Now, I would be very specific for the security side of it. Now, when we say security challenges post pandemic, in last 1 year or 1.5 year, what we have seen from IT, from security, and from data protection point of view are like this. Now, the first one is your seamless connectivity. Now, connectivity earlier was never a challenge. Now that everybody is working from home, right? The right set of connectivity is something which is the most complicated piece that we need to have. Now, why connectivity is important? Because based on connectivity, you will have your collaboration and the productivity. This is something which is core for our delivery. Now, the next thing is the trust on the new perimeter. Now that even Ashish also mentioned that each computer became a perimeter. Now, how we trust the new perimeter, right? Now, earlier we had many point solutions, blind spots, but we managed because we are there in a defined perimeter. Now, scalability is always a challenge because of remote working. While all these things were happening, the other side of the story is the bad guys. Now, the commodity malware, the personalized payloads, phishing, ransomware, supply chain attacks, and because of all this, incident response also is quite challenging. Now, if you put together the entire story, the challenge what I see for all IT professionals, specifically for the security professionals, are how to manage the new perimeter, how to implement new solution, and how to scale up.
Thank you so much, Chandan. So, Phil, with that, I'll remain on the challenge for a little longer, and let me come to the next question with you. So, what are some of the traditional measures that organizations were using, which now were not relevant anymore? And what were some of the specific changes that had to be made to meet these challenges?
Thanks, Irina. That's a great question. And one of the ways to answer this is to really understand what the attackers are doing. And then by having a good understanding of the attackers, their tools, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, we can then look at what we've done in the past and realize that it's just not going to serve us anymore. And I think one of the things that's really important about attackers is that the dwell time inside an organization, it does vary by country. And what I mean by dwell time is once they make the initial intrusion, how long are they going to sit inside the network looking to upgrade their privileges, looking for different things to attack? You know, it used to be, I believe last year, it was 9 months was the average dwell time. So I think that's a very sobering fact that the attacker is spending multiple months inside our network. And so the first thing I would say is the reason why this is happening is because we don't have an end-to-end view of what's going on. The only reason why attackers can stay inside the network for so long is that we have so many siloed security products that don't talk to each other. So ultimately, the answer is we have to be able to develop an end-to-end view of everything that's going inside our network. And at that point, we can then apply techniques like artificial intelligence and threat intelligence, obviously, combined together to find that needle in the haystack. So that's the first thing I would say, is that you really need to get out of the siloed mindset and create this full view. And the obvious way to do that is by deploying a SIEM, bringing in telemetry across all of your products in the organization. We could really talk about this question for hours about things that don't cut it anymore, but I'd like to touch on one. When we look at modern attacks, even attacks that have happened within 12 months, many of them, the attackers have got in through an old school full VPN. So it's still remarkable in this day and time that people are deploying a traditional VPN. And what I mean by that is you authenticate once and then you have full access through the pipe. That's just not going to cut it. We've all heard zero trust. Zero trust is really a very, very simple concept. You assume every time an access is made remotely, you don't assume any trust. You re-authenticate, you check the credentials, you assume it every time and you give minimal access. And you also want to reduce what that outside person can access. We call it reducing the blast radius. So if somebody does get in, they can't do that much damage. I think those are probably the top two, Irina, that I'd like to start with is end-to-end security, and then going down from that, let's implement zero trust.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Zero Trust really has become the cornerstone of a lot of initiatives which is happening as a way of blueprinting the next phase of security. With that, let me come back to you, Chandan. Here's the thing. The overall cost of security is really the brand of the company. But on the other hand, it also is a cost of how much of security at the cost of productivity and all the challenges that we heard. How do we overcome them with an end-to-end solution approach? How are you implementing this with your experience?
See, from an end-to-end solution approach, I would like to use a simple theory called simplify, differentiate, and change. Now, when it comes to simplify, we looked at what are the things we can simplify from a security solution point of view, right? When it comes to simplification, it is not only the technology, but from a partner point of view, from a platform point of view, and from an integration point of view. What are the things we can simplify? What are the different frameworks like zero trust, passwordless authentication, cloud adoption, which we can look at? Now, the other part of the simplification is take security more closer to the data, not in data center. That is from a simplification point of view. Now, what is that we would like to differentiate? End-to-end security visibility from a management point of view, reduce as much as possible blind spots by integrating solutions, security by design powered by automation and probably with AI and ML. Now, best in class solutions and reduce as much as possible point solutions. Rather, we prefer something where we can achieve all these capabilities on a platform. Now, while this is simplify and differentiate, there is something on the change side also. Now, scale with the growth. That is something we believe, and adapt more native solutions to match the growth. As an IT organization, while we are growing, it is important to align ourselves to the growth, and adapt and scale is something which is our mantra. Now, bring more security to identity, data, device, application, and together. And that's what your zero trust and the other frameworks around zero trust actually works. Then real-time detection, manage, which again talks about assume breach. And finally, the data management piece. Now, it is so important today to manage the data, to understand the data, to identify the data, to ensure that right kind of security is implemented at a ground level. So simplify, differentiate, and change is something is our mantra.
Thank you so much, Chandan. And I really like that because it brings across a very nice way of remembering the process which goes behind implementing all these simplify, differentiate, and change. Thank you so much for that. Okay, with that, Ashish, I come to you. One of the things which is also assuming a lot of importance with the changing security landscape is the role of the regulatories and how you can actually be ahead of the curve in terms of creating the overall know-how to go across to the complexity of what might be required there. So how are companies prioritizing and managing the controls and checks of the regulatory environment?
Yeah, Irina, we know that there are a number of regulations coming into effect in each and every geography, which are extremely demanding. and the onus is completely on the companies who handle data from the privacy perspective, protecting that data, and ensuring that it's not going out in a wrong hands. That's becoming topmost priority, and the privacy related regulations are taking over kind of major security decisions. As part of the strategic implementations, we keep close watch on the number of privacy related changes, number of other regulations which impact our business models, and make sure that we have aligned our security deployments and rest of the policies and procedures, so that we have bridged all the gaps which could probably become issue. At the same time, the lot of stuff really boils down to the technology adoptions, that we have either inherited or we are planning in future. So I think just to link it back to what Phil said earlier, the majority of that decision is driven by the the platform kind of approach rather than selecting point solutions. With these point solutions have been delivering for the past challenges, which are not going to be enough for today's and tomorrow's risks or the threats which are evolving rapidly. So what we do is we are very cautious and cognizant about the these thoughts, and what we have done is aligned our investments in the right direction so that we leverage new age technologies, the threat-based detection and rapid response capabilities that tools or the platforms offer. And we are purposely doing away with kind of legacy and standalone point products as and when possible.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ashish. Phil, with that, I come to you to understand how are you seeing things globally? What are some of the top trends and ways that you're seeing organizations combat these security threats?
Yeah, that's a great question, Irina. And every country is slightly different. And I have to say, Chandan and Ashish both covered a lot of the top things that I would raise as well. So I'll try to be complimentary and not cover all the great points that they discussed before. And I'm going to go back to, I think, globally, people need to understand the threats that are facing them. And that's really, really important. But some of the trends that we haven't talked about so far is obviously people are very, very concerned about ransomware. We're seeing a 400% increase in ransomware, depending on the country, but there's no threats on the attackers. So people are very concerned to make sure that they have a plan around ransomware. How can they recover their systems? How can they recover their data? And don't forget that ransomware is multifaceted. So you also have to deal with, even if you pay the ransom, the attacker still could release your data. So you still could have a data leak. So it ties into the compliance that Ashish was just talking about, and it ties into data that Chandan was talking about before. So I think one of the trends is that everybody is very, very concerned about ransomware. And I just want to point something out. Remember, ransomware is not an attack method. Ransomware is a payload. So the attack could come in through phishing. It could come in through multiple ways. Ransomware is what is activated when they're in. So I think that's very, very, very important that we talk about. Some other trends we haven't talked about is human-powered services, or people services is probably a better way to put it, in that once we've deployed our solutions, once we've done our risk analysis, it's really, really important to continually validate because security is different than any other form of IT, because we have a motivated human being at the other end attacking us. So we need to have equally motivated human beings checking that we can't be attacked. And so red teaming, where we hire an organization to come in and attack us like they're a hacker and look for our weak points, this is a huge growing trend. We have blue teaming, where the organization does it themselves. And then we have purple teaming, where we have a combination of both. But one of the largest trends is the growth in these people services, of partnering with organizations who can come in, and help you do that red teaming, do a compromise assessment that can help look at it, because it always helps to have that second set of eyes. And the other thing that I'd like to cover is that we've talked about a lot of these trends, and we talked about zero trust, we talked about end-to-end. Let's not forget that there's a plumbing below those that enables them. And so the last point I'd like to make, and I could keep going, is that identity and a single identity is really critical. So what I'm hearing globally is that to enable end-to-end security, to enable zero trust, and don't forget zero trust applies to customers, partners as who access your systems as well as employees, you really have to have a strong single identity that can give you that granular control. So I think those are definitely some of the top trends that I'm seeing.
Thanks a lot, Phil. I would stay with that with you a little longer. We just heard from everybody about first the challenges, then we also heard the approaches everybody's taking to kind of combat these security issues which are coming. And I guess the big takeaway that I had is there are a lot of simplistic way to cut through the complexities to enable all organizations to be future ready, if I may, at all points of times. So when you think about the comprehensive end-to-end security by getting beyond the perimeter security, especially in the modern hybrid work frame, what are some of the things that people should be keeping in mind while implementing that, Phil?
Thanks, Irina. We've all talked about this today, and the need for security really starts with end-to-end security. Attackers are getting into our networks because they're way too siloed. Only by looking at an end-to-end view can the organization really see what is going on. And end-to-end encompasses so much. It means taking the silos away. It means the products working together. It means a single point of administration. It means single identity. It means bringing the telemetry together to a single place, applying artificial intelligence, applying threat intelligence, using automation. End to end is a very simple thing to say, but there's a lot within it that basically gets all of these individual silos working together into a complete system, and then layering on compliance, like Ashish was talking about, looking at the data, like Chandan was talking about. So really the future of cybersecurity is the end-to-end approach.
Thanks a lot. That really sounds like a wonderful way to kind of ensure that you're ahead of the curve and ensuring that you are putting across the organization in a very foolproof manner, setting up for the future. With that, coming to you, Ashish, we heard about the integrated security that can be applied through the length and breadth of the organization. So, how are you seeing the role of the entire team towards implementing this? What does it entail?
Great question, Erin. I was actually expecting after Phil, elaborated it. So, learnings from past show that, best of the breed solutions alone are usually short-lived and often run out of steam, as those are not designed to offer breadth of the solutions and evolve into highly integrated platforms. We have gone through it for many, many years. And now when we know that the adversaries on the other side are extremely prepared and tech savvy, and they use the advanced technologies to attack us, we need to be equally prepared. So today, machine-to-machine integration, ability to tap into global threat feeds, leveraging AI and ML to process billions of signals every hour are essential for large organizations like us. On-premise and legacy solutions fail miserably. We have seen that, and I don't need to repeat it again here. We are extremely cautious while choosing solutions and preferred platforms offering integration of various security capabilities, single pane of glass for end-to-end visibility, as Phil mentioned, and built-in automated response, preferably backed by managed hunting. So our foresight and timely investments in critical technologies, including Microsoft platforms, really helped us handle challenging times during pandemic. We were able to mobilize large workforce within 2 to 3 weeks of the time. And we would like to maintain momentum and build on the early success to make sure we protect valuable information assets in future. That's my take, Irina.
Thank you. So, Chandan, while it philosophically sounds that it's the best way of doing things and everybody should be doing it, but obviously there are challenges you encounter when implementing an end-to-end solution story in your organization. How do you go about making it real?
See, when we talk about an end-to-end solution implementation, the the primary thing that is required for any one of us to understand is the landscape. I need to know my backyard better than anybody else to customize the solution that I need. Most of the time, security solutions are retrofitted to the entire design. But what we need going forward is the solution which is upfront and native to the solution. I should not buy from some other OEM to protect something else. It is something which should be built in part of the solution. It should enhance the solution and it should talk to somebody else. The integration is such a key feature today, and the more native integration I have, it is a lot easier for me to have an end-to-end solution in a simplified manner. Now, if you talk about cloud, if the cloud is not having the all the bells and whistles to secure it, and if I need to go and depend on something else, the solution is never going to work. If I extend that solution to my on-prem workload, right, then I can have same solution for my cloud, for my on-prem workload, for my endpoints. But for that, I need to know what are my assets, where are they, what state, what is that I need to secure them together. So this is my take on the implementation piece.
Thank you very much. And that's a very measured and aware way of kind of going about implementing what you have to do in your own landscape. Thank you. Phil, with that, I come to the last question. Here's the thing. You are seeing from your vantage point, lots of organizations implementing this in various forms and shape. What would be your take on some of the best practices and guidances that you would like to give the audience when they embark on the security journey?
Yeah, that's a great question to end on, Irina. And I think the way that I'm going to start to answer this is that I think we have to remember that security is not just a technology problem, it's a geopolitical problem. And so I think, first of all of our organizations need to work with our governments, and we need to get agreement with nation states. We need to try to stop this problem and stop the attackers coming in. So I think the first best practice is an awareness of what actually creates the cybersecurity problem. And I know that our world leaders met in Geneva a few months back, and I think that's the start of it. But until then, we have to accept that things are not getting better. So understanding the threat landscape, understanding what attackers are out there, that is definitely the best practice. And if you don't have the resources to do it, then partner with somebody who can provide you with those people services. I think it was Ashish that mentioned managed services. Absolutely. I think there's going to be a strong managed services response here for those organizations that can't afford their own cyber professionals. So I think the other best practice that dovetails quite nicely into is that there is a worldwide shortage of cyber professionals. So for the students that are watching this, go into cybersecurity. It's a great field to go into. And for the organizations, what are your plans to build cybersecurity capabilities? Are you going to be able to build those capabilities yourself, or again, do you need to find a strong partner that you can work with that can deliver those? Keeping on top of all the trends, we've talked about a lot of things here that I won't reiterate, but the top ones, zero trust, end-to-end security, being aware of what's going on, talk to your colleagues, CIO panels, CISO panels, find out what your colleagues are doing. And, I think the last thing, which will tie back to the people as well, remember that it's not a technology problem, that ultimately there are motivated human beings out there trying to attack our organizations. So use technology with, end-to-end and zero trust, but invest in your people, invest in red teaming, look at compromise assessments, these kind of things. Security is really going to evolve into this kind of complex mix of everything working together. And so your job is to simplify it as much as you can. Take an end-to-end point of view and implement best practices like zero trust.
Perfect. This was such a learning moment for me as well, just listening to you and the rest of the panelists, hearing about things that you all have already done and things that is there in the thinking, possibly in the kitchen, which is yet to be kind of cooked and brought out. So thank you so much for a very insightful and engaging and a learning moment. I'm sure the panelists had a great time talking to each other as well. And thanks a lot to all the participants who've tuned in to listen to us. Have a great day.